Hello my lovelies, welcome to my channel. This is the first video I'm ever making on BookTube, or just on YouTube for that matter, in general. I've been a consumer of BookTube for long time, but I've never actually posted anything, and I've always wanted to, but I've been scared, and now I was like, you know what, this is the year I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, and I'm going to do it. I love to talk about books, and now I have people to talk about books with, so I'm really excited. I thought about doing a newbie tag, but then I was like, you know what, I kind of hate watching those videos. They're like my least favorite videos to watch on BookTube. So I was like, no, we're just going to jump right in and we'll give a January and February reading wrap up of all the books that I read in January and February. Before I get into the books that I read, I do want to give a little bit of a welcome, little tiny bit. If you don't care, please skip this, but I wanted to kind of introduce myself a little bit to you guys. So hi, welcome to my channel. You can call me Lynn. The face blurring, we're just going to work with it. We're going to ignore it. I am a minor and I don't feel entirely comfortable just putting my face online. So we're just going to bear with me and it's going to be okay. I was really scared. I was talking to my friend. I was really scared that if I posted with my face blurred out, I was like, no one's going to want to watch me. No one's going to want to watch me. But you know what? It's okay, because if you care about books, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether you see my face. It just matters what I'm saying. So hopefully we can just work past the face blurring. I read pretty much genres all over the place. I think fantasy is probably my biggest genre, but I also really like literary fiction. I love horror. I love thriller, suspense, mystery, historical. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but I'm trying to get into reading more memoirs this year. That's what I'm trying to work on. I haven't read any yet this year, but I'm trying. I really am. So that's kind of a little bit about me. The majority of books I read are queer books or published by women. That's just what I like to read as a queer woman. That's what I find most relatable, so that's what I read the most. So if that's what you're into, you're in the right place. And without further ado, let's get into the books I read in January and February. In the month of January, I read 10 books. I had a really excellent reading month because my average rating, it was like 4 point something, which is like that's really good. So let's get into it. The first book I read in 2024 in January was The Collected Poems by Sylvia Plath, which I don't know, some people might not count this as a book because it's a poetry collection, but I mean, it's pages, words, and I read it, so I'm going to count it as a book. I don't feel comfortable giving this a rating because, first of all, Sylvia Plath, very problematic person. We don't support her in her actions and her beliefs, but because she is no longer alive, I think it's fine to read her stuff and to buy her stuff because she's not profiting from it or getting anything from it now because she's dead. But some of these poems were really good. Some of them I had to be like, Sylvia, girl, you can't say that kind of stuff. Like, what are you doing? But overall, I think I liked some of them. Like I said, I didn't rate it. It's unrated. Would I recommend? Maybe. I don't know if you're a poetry nerd. The only reason I read it was to figure out what the hype was for. And I think some of her work is really good and some of it is not. But that's just the way it is. The next book I read, which is probably going to be my best book of the entire year, I'm calling it right now, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I'm sure everyone that's watching this video has heard of this book, at least heard of it. You've probably read it if you're a fantasy person, but if not, I'm sure you've heard of it because it's very, very popular. This book was incredible. I always hear people that don't like this book say that it was too confusing or it was too, it didn't make sense. And that's true. It is a little bit difficult to follow, a little bit confusing because it's very whimsy, magical. I personally absolutely love this. I gave this book 5 stars. Probably my favorite book I've ever read. If you don't know, the plot is there's these doors that lead to this other world, kind of, where the Starless Sea is a part of this world, and our main character finds a book, and in this book it's accounts of his life. It's things that happened in his childhood about when he found this door and why he didn't open this door, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. It's literally talking about me. And it kind of follows his whole journey of how he discovers this whole other world and all the things that go on. And what I think made me love this book is not the plot, but just the way that it's written. Because as you can see, I annotated it very heavily. I literally ran out of blue and yellow annotating tabs annotating this. And it's just absolutely incredible. The writing style, it's so whimsical and captivating. It genuinely made me feel when I was little, it made me feel nostalgic for when I was really young, reading like under my covers and feeling like I was in this like magical world with a book. That's how this book makes me feel. And I love the formatting. I love the way it's written. Absolutely loved this. And there is romance in it, queer romance in it, and it's very beautiful and just a gorgeous book. You have to pick it up. The next book I don't actually have a physical copy of with me because my physical copy is at my mom's house, but that book is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. I rated this one 3.75 stars, which is good, just short of 4 stars. It's very short, easy to read, really quick, like fast-paced, all good. I'm struggling to remember the plot of this one, I'm not gonna lie, but I know it's very like, it's historical in Chicago and it's like detective vibes. It is sapphic, and our main character, she is cursed, I think, or she like sold her soul or something to a demon, so she's like knows when she's gonna die. She's a detective, or she does something with like detective type work, and she's trying to find who is like causing these really brutal, gruesome murders, and it's a demon, and she knows it's a demon, and so she's trying to like find the demon, and she's working with her girlfriend to find this demon. And it was really good. I thought it was really entertaining. It kept me going. I don't think it was anything like phenomenal. Like, it's not going to be like my favorite of the year, but it was definitely really good. And I would recommend if you're looking something short, fast paced, but like easy to get into, easy to read, that'll keep you hooked. That's a good one. The next book I read is The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean. Had very, very high expectations for this book. Just because, why? I don't even know. Because like I literally hadn't seen this book like recommended to me. I just like kind of stumbled across it looking, and I was like, this is going to be good. This is going to be really good. And it did not disappoint. I rated this 4 stars. The plot of this book. So there's this society of people who eat books. They're the book eaters. And some of them eat books. Some of them, the mind eaters, which are like also a part of the species, but like a different branch. I don't really know. Some of them are mind eaters, and the mind eaters, as you could assume, eat people's minds. It has dual timeline point of view, so it talks about when our main character was growing up versus now in the present. And in the present, our main character is trying to help facilitate a good life for her son, who is only 5 years old, but he is a mind eater. And the mind eaters are obviously kind of looked down upon because they have to eat people's minds, and they're kind of not free to just be themselves in society. They have to be like tamed by these like knights. And it's really weird, and she doesn't want that kind of life for her son, so she is trying to find him a better life for the two of them. We see kind of the events that led up in the dual timeline. We see, you know, how she got away from this society, like the experiences she experienced and why the society is maybe not so good. It's got some deep underlying, like, messed up things going on. There are a lot of good, like, themes about, like, feminism and motherhood in this book that I really enjoyed. It is also sapphic, so, you know, that's always good. And yeah, I really, really did enjoy this book. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really unique concept, and I really enjoyed it. Would recommend. The next book I read is The Spirit Bares Its Teeth. First of all, can we just take a moment? Look at that cover. This is literally the prettiest book cover I think I own. It is so beautiful. Like, that's why I picked it up. I picked it up because the cover was pretty, and it did not disappoint. So this is like a fantasy horror novel. It's like YA horror fantasy. I gave this one 4.25 stars, which is good. This is really good. I highly, highly recommend. Definitely very graphic. There were some parts where I had to like put it down and be like, oh my god, like just kind of drink some water, breathe some fresh air, just because it is very detailed and very gory at parts. So make sure you look up trigger warnings if you're going to read this, but overall, really, really good book. We follow our main character, who is Silas. Silas is a transgender man in 1800s, I think, England, I think. I don't know. I'm struggling to remember. But Silas wants to be a surgeon. And Silas also has violet eyes. And what does it mean when you have violet eyes? It means that you can see into the veil of, like, the dead. And so for the women that have violet eyes, they get married off really, really young. Their parents marry them off really, really young. And they're kind of forced into these marriages because all of the men want daughters and sons, specifically sons, who have violet eyes and can see into the veil. So Silas can't transition like publicly because of the time era and the like stigmatisms that follow with that. So as far as society is concerned, he's a woman, and they're trying to marry him off. and they kind of figure out that that there's something going on, that he's not like a quote unquote normal woman. And so he ends up being sent to this, it's sort of like a mental hospital, but it's for just a bunch of women who all have violet eyes, but none of them are actually like mentally deranged. They're just, women who dared to not fall in line with what society wanted of them. It kind of delves into the really dark, terrible things that are going on in this hospital with these women and Silas, and it's really, really emotional. It's really jarring at times, very gruesome, but it's really, really good. And I really like the perspective it has on like feminism and the way feminism affects like transgender men, because when you transition from a woman to a man, you still like experienced misogyny, and that's still like a part of you, even though you're no longer a woman. You still know like the struggle, and I think that's a really important perspective to put out there. Really good book. I really do recommend. Next book, another one that I don't have my copy with me, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. Now, I'm really scared to give my opinion on this book because this book is so beloved, and this book is so like, it's like the weird girl lit fic book, and I love literary fiction. I love weird girl books, but this one just kind of fell a little flat for me. I gave this 2.75. Now, do I think this book was bad? No, not by any means. I think that Mona Awad is a genius. I think that she's a very talented writer. I think that the way she thinks, I think she's very smart. And I think the writing in this book, the whole book, very, very smart. It just wasn't for me, I don't think, and that's fine. I can definitely understand why people love this book so much. I just personally didn't, and that is okay. Bunny, if you don't know, it follows our main character who's at this college, and she's in this writing class with this group of girls who are kind of very like cultish, and she ends up being invited to a party with them, and she kind of joins their group, and it kind of follows like all the things as she uncovers what really is going on with this group of girls, and it's insane, it's unhinged. I definitely think that the whole like plot twist, the whole ending was phenomenal. I think that was so smart. I think that Mona really tied that all together in like such a perfect way that I was just not expecting, but looking back, it made a lot of sense. Would I recommend this book? I think if you know what you're getting into and you know that's something you are going to enjoy, then yes, read it, because it's good for what it is. If you're someone who likes more fast-paced books that keep you like really on the edge of your seat the whole time, then I would say probably not, because this book just isn't that, but it is still a good book. And I do think that it did what it was trying to do. It just didn't do what I wanted it to do. And that is okay. It's okay. The next book I read in January is The House on the Cerulean Sea. This is another one that is very well beloved. And this is one, I didn't even pick this book out. My mom actually got this book for me. I think if I saw this book, I wouldn't have gravitated towards it. Like, this wouldn't be the type of book that I would just pick up and try to read. But my mom found it for me, and she got it for me because she saw it in like a Facebook group. I rated this book 3.25 stars. Our main character in this book, he works for this company that like oversees all of the magical children, and he ends up being sent to write a report on this orphanage that houses the most like dangerous of the magical children, literally like the spawn of Satan. All the kids that like everyone, society kind of hates and shuts them out because they think they're like monsters. These are the kids at this orphanage that he's going to. I really love the personality of all the kids in this book. I love getting to meet them. You will fall in love with all of the characters, because the way that they're written as children, and you can see that they're all children, they're all flawed, but they also just need to be loved and nurtured. My pet peeve with this book is that multiple times it would mention our main character, like a whole kind of like big part in the story is that he's like a little bit bigger, he's not skinny, and they kind of mention all the time just about him like commenting on his own size and being insecure, but it's not like insecure in like a way that they're like trying to bring up, oh, you don't need to be insecure. It's more like they bring it up jokingly and like kind of joke about how he doesn't like the way he looks and how he needs to lose weight, and I just wasn't expecting that in this, and it was just kind of unnecessary to me, and I don't know, it didn't bother me or like trigger me in any way, but I think that's something that like if you went into this book not knowing that was there, you might get a little like, oh, and there might not be some things that are good for everyone to hear, and that part I didn't really enjoy. But other than that, I thought the plot was pretty good. It was very like cozy vibes, and it did have a queer romance, and the romance was sweet, and it was good, and yeah. So would I recommend? Maybe. It just depends. Next book I read is The Girl in Question by Tess Sharp. This is the sequel to The Girls I've Been, which I read The Girls I've Been a couple years ago. Like, it's been a while, but I didn't even know there was a sequel. literally had no idea until I was like scrolling on like the Barnes & Noble website and I saw the sequel and I was like, oh my God, there's a sequel. I didn't even know. And so of course I got it and I read it and it was excellent. I rated this book 4.25 stars. I don't really know how to explain the plot because I don't want to say anything that gives away anything that happens in the first book, but I don't remember the full plot of the first book because I read the first book so long ago. But this is a sapphic thriller, very action-packed. Definitely would recommend. It's another one you might want to check some trigger warnings, especially for the first book. I think the first book has more stuff that you might need to check trigger warnings for than the second book, but I would definitely recommend the series. I think it's really good, and it's definitely like if you're looking for a fast-paced thriller, keep you on the edge of your toes, where every 2 seconds you're like, what's like not knowing what's going to happen next, this one's for you. Next book is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This was actually a reread, and if I reread a book, that means that book is really, really good because I rarely ever reread books, which I guess maybe is not so true. I've been rereading more books recently. I used to literally never reread books, but I've been doing it more recently. But this one I reread so I could annotate it. Look at how many tabs I put in this book. I ran out of both red and blue tabs tabbing this book, and it's short. Like, this is a short book. So that's just how much there is to mark in this book. It's so incredible. I rated it 5 stars the first time I read it, rated it 5 stars again with this reread. This book is just the most beautiful, lyrical, magically written book I've ever read. If you don't know what this book is about, it's essentially these two women who are on opposite sides of a war in time, and they communicate to each other through letters, but these letters aren't like traditional letters. They're like letters that span, time and centuries and space-time. They're like really intricate. It's really, really cool. I really think the writers of this were so smart the way that they wrote this. It's really, really beautiful, and the last bit will have you like sobbing. Oh my God. Really incredible. It is sci-fi, but you don't really get to know a lot about like the actual war and what's going on in the time war or why they're there. Like, they never explain anything like that, which I see people sometimes complain about that and say it's confusing because you don't know what's going on, which is kind of true. But also that's not the point. The point of this is that it's the most beautiful love story you will ever read, ever. Yes, it is sci-fi, but it's not. It's more romantic. It's just a sci-fi romance. That's what it is. But very beautiful, very emotional. So many great quotes in this book. Such beautiful writing, such beautiful prose. Highly, highly recommend. And then the last book that I read in January was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. If you are anywhere on Book Talk or BookTube or just the book community in general, I'm sure you've heard of this book. Everyone's been talking about it a lot recently because the third book in the series, Oathbound, comes out, I think by the time I post this video, it will have already been out, but it comes out like the first week in March. And I personally am so excited because I read Legendborn. I loved Legendborn. Legendborn was absolutely beautiful. I rated it 4 stars. This book, I think that the whole magic system and the whole like plot idea behind it is so different and creative. It's not like any other fantasy book I've read, which I think is really, really interesting. It's basically this like college society that this girl it's like a secret society, and our main character, Bree, discovers them, and she discovers that she has powers. And I don't want to say anymore because I don't want to give you any spoilers because so much happens in this book, but it's absolutely incredible and I highly, highly recommend. Now, moving on to February, I read 7 books in February, and the first one I read was Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rivka Brent. I gave this one 3 stars. I think it was good. This book is definitely very like emotional, very heartfelt, very wholesome at parts. It talks a lot about family dynamics. The plot of this book, it follows our main character who is young. I believe she's 12, maybe 13. Actually, I think she's 14. Anyway, so she's a young girl, and she has an older sister, and she has her mother and dad, and then she has her uncle, who she's very, very close with, and her uncle has just passed away of AIDS, and it's the 1980s, and it kind of just deals with everything that she's going through and everything that she discovers about his life after he dies, because she ends up meeting this man who was the man that her uncle was dating, and she had never met him while her uncle was alive, and now they kind of have this unusual friendship because they both bond, because they both really loved her uncle, and they kind of like experience that loss together, and that brings them closer. This, like I said, it follows a lot with family dynamics. It follows a lot with the relationship between her and her sister, and like imperfect family relationships, and about how characters are flawed. Everyone's imperfect. People aren't perfect, and it's very raw, very real, very emotional, but heartfelt at the same time. It will leave you feeling like warm, like it's nice, it's pleasant, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. Again, I don't think it was anything life-changing for me, but I think it was definitely good for what it was. I think if you're looking for something kind of slower, kind of sweeter, just to sit down and like relax with, this one's a good one. The next 2 books I read were Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm, which are the first 2 books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. The reason I read these is because first of all, I read Six of Crows a while back, like a couple months ago, and I absolutely adored Six of Crows. I thought the duology was so incredible, so well written, just so beautiful. I love it. And then I read these 2, and they were not on the same level at all. The reason I read these was 1, because I love Six of Crows, but 2, because I really wanted to watch the Netflix show. I don't know if I will be watching the Netflix show now, just because these books fell really, really flat for me. The quality of the writing from Six of Crows compared to this, it's like a huge drop in this. It's so much more like choppy sentences, a lot of dialogue, not a lot of character depth, less like, the plot was fine, but I think the writing just really didn't do it for me. Now, with that being said, I read these books really fast. I got through them really quickly, so they did keep me like going, which is good. But I don't know. I just wasn't so into them. I gave the first one 2.75 and I gave the second one 2.5. I disliked the second one even more. I don't know. These books just they fell flat for me. And I'm sorry because I know they're very well loved. But no, if you're going to do Leigh Bardugo, read Six of Crows, you can skip these. Next book I read was The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. This is another one that I feel like all the books I'm talking about in February, I'm like, no, this fell flat, I was disappointed. But it's true. This book was just not at all what I was expecting. I was under the impression that this was going to be a cozy, sapphic, witchy fantasy romance, and based on the synopsis, I thought it was going to be the same vibes as Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley, which I love Adrienne Tooley. I love Sweet and Bitter Magic. I thought it was incredible, and the plot of this sounded similar because we've got our witch who is cursed that no one can fall in love with her, and that's like essentially almost the exact same plot as like Sweet and Bitter Magic, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll eat this up. I did not. Aside from the romance, the plot was so not interesting, so boring, so predictable, which I know with cozy fantasies, like it's supposed to be predictable, but this was just like, there was literally nothing. Like it was like, gave us absolutely nothing. And then the actual romance, I didn't even like the characters together. I did not like these 2 women together at all. I was not rooting for them. And what really threw me off with this is that it was kind of marketed as like a sweet, cozy fantasy. So I was expecting lots of like giggling, kicking my feet type moments. I didn't get that. Every single time they had like a moment that could be a cute moment, it would end up turning into something like spicy, something dirty. And it was like, okay, like it's fine. I don't mind when books have spice in them, but that just wasn't how this was like branded. I wasn't expecting it, and it kind of was like jarring to me to see that. Like I went into this wanting something like sweet and lighthearted and cutesy, and that just wasn't what it was at all. And so I was really disappointed. I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. So would I recommend? Probably not. Moving on from that to something much better, I read Bloodmarked, the sequel to Legendborn, and I don't want to say anything about the plot because I'm worried if I say anything, I'll just spoil the first book, but absolutely incredible, even better than the first one. I gave this one 4.25? No, I gave this one 4.5 stars. Even better than the first one, and the first one was great. So I don't want to say anything about the plot because I really don't want to spoil the first one, but I will say the like last fourth of this book left me shocked. The whole like plot twist, which to be fair, like I was kind of expecting it, but also I wasn't. Incredible. Also, one note on Legendborn that I forgot to say, which minor spoiler. So if you don't want like anything to be spoiled, you might want to skip. Minor spoiler. When I was reading Legendborn, so there's kind of a love triangle with our main character Bree and these 2 other guys. And when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, these guys are in love with each other too. Like they obviously both like Bree, but they've got a little thing going on too. And I wasn't expecting that to be like true. Like I just thought it in my head, like lightheartedly, not like meaningfully. But then it's like canonically confirmed that the love triangle is also like them together. Like they also kind of have a thing going on. And I thought that was really cool and really interesting. And that really made me happy because I'm not normally a fan of love triangles. But when they're like that, then I think they're interesting. Anyways, but yeah, Bloodmarked, very good. Definitely recommend. But if you read Legendborn, you're going to want to read Bloodmarked. Like you might as well just buy them all at the same time because you're going to want to know what happens next. And I am so ready for Oathbound. Oh my goodness. I have it pre-ordered. I should be getting it this week. I'm so excited. The next book I read was Rainbow Black by Maggie Thrash. I was not expecting to like this book as much as I did. I really, really enjoyed this book. Obviously, I thought I was going to like it because I wouldn't have picked up a book that I thought I was going to not like, but I really didn't think I was going to love it, and I genuinely love this book. I think I like the first half of it more than the second half, but that kind of tends to be like an ongoing pattern with me because especially when books like the first half follows them as a child and the second half there's like a big time skip, I normally always like the part where they're younger better, and that was what happened in this book. But the plot of this book, very unhinged, very messy. We have our main character and her parents are on trial for child molestation. They run this daycare, and it's been like brought to parents' attention that maybe they're abusing these kids and doing like satanic rituals with them. And our main character, who is very young, has to go to court and speak in favor of her parents, in the defense of her parents, and say that they're not child molesters. This book covers a lot of like sensitive topics, obviously, but it does a really good job of not being like looking over them. And because our main character is so young, she doesn't really understand the depth of everything that's going on, and it kind of talks about that because it's all from her perspective. I thought this book was really well done, really well written, and it did keep me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I wanted to keep reading, and I really enjoyed it. And I would definitely recommend, if this is something you're into. You have to be a specific audience to like this book. Definitely, I am that audience, and if you are that audience, then I highly recommend it. The next book is another reread, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I love this book. This is one of my guilty pleasure books, I feel like, because obviously this is a good book and it's very well loved, but I feel like in terms of all the books I've read, this isn't like the best writing, this isn't the best plot, this isn't the best characters. Like, it's not the best of anything, but I still love it so much. I think it's like nostalgia. I just really love this book. And I do like the movie too, but I don't think the movie really compares to the book. I think there's so much more that you get out of the book that you just don't get from the movie. And there's so many parts that I'm so mad they didn't include in the movie from the book. It makes me mad. But the book is so beautiful. Like I said, this was a reread, rated it 5 stars the first time, and I rated it 5 stars again. And I just think it's so beautiful and so incredible, and just such a smart and touching emotional journey of queer love. And I always am a sucker for like historical queer romance. This one does not disappoint. If you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend. And that wraps it up with all of the books that I read in January and February. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys can subscribe and we can be a big, happy family, friends, and we can talk more about books. I do plan to post every week, so stay tuned so I can post next week, and I'll see you guys then. Bye!